And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville, your host. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time tonight, I would like to remind you that you can catch us every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on ucy.tv. You can access the show's personal page at ucy.tv/TT for Truth on the Tracks. You can also catch my work as it comes out in real time on activistpost.com, which is where I have the majority of my articles posted, but I'm also a contributing writer to the antimedia.org and progressivegazette.com. You can find my work specifically, if you're interested in that, at brandonturbeville.com, which is the website that I repost all of my articles, all of the archive versions of this show, all of the interviews I've done, and all of the other relevant information there. You can also find my books at brandonturbeville.com by clicking on the Books tab. So please go check that out as well. I wanted to bring a very special guest up tonight. This is Alan Moore from AriesTacticalSolutions.com and Elite Pawn and Gun out of Columbia, South Carolina. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff tonight, but I wanted to talk about, he's been on the show before where we discussed prepping on a budget, which is an extremely important topic considering the way the economy looks and really the way the police state is growing. The idea of prepping is becoming increasingly important, and the vast majority of us do not have enough money to do it like what we see on the more popular prepping shows and organizations. So most of us don't have $100,000 to spend on bunkers or years worth of storable food. So Alan's going to tell us how to prep on a budget, and we're also going to maybe talk about some firearm issues and whatever else we get into. So again, his website is AriesTacticalSolutions.com, and in fact, but I'll let Alan explain a little more about what that website is and what that school is. So with that, Alan, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm glad you got me back again.
Yeah, why don't you, before we get into this topic, why don't you tell everybody what is Aries Tactical Solutions? What do you guys do there? What kind of services do you offer?
Well, Aries Tactical Solutions is something that I came up with a while back. I had taught martial arts for quite a while, and I'd always been into shooting and firearms training and everything. And so it was just kind of the next logical step to move on to different firearms training stuff, combining it with a lot of the martial arts concepts. And basically what Aries Tactical Solutions is, we offer firearms training. We do the South Carolina Concealed Weapons Permit classes, and we're also hoping to get the Utah permit also so we can start doing the Utah classes. And we offer advanced firearms training for handgun and rifle. We do some knife training classes. I have a little bit of a background in Kali, which is a Filipino knife fighting style. And we also do, which is kind of our one of our signature courses because nobody else does it, is modern combat archery, which that is basically taking our rifle course and removing the rifle from your hands and adding a bow into it. And it's very unique, very physically demanding course. And that's also one of the courses we offer as well.
And you offer some hand-to-hand training as well, don't you?
Yes, so we do. We also have some hand-to-hand training that we do also. I used to do it more in a a classroom type setting, and now I'm mainly focused on seminar type stuff. Maybe like a 6-hour, 8-hour seminar kind of class. And while I used to do more of the mixed martial arts type stuff, I've changed it a lot over to more street-based applications because there's some things that you can do in the mixed martial arts world that you cannot do in the street fighting scenario. And a lot of people don't like to hear that, but it is the truth because I've been in both, and I know people who have been in both that can tell you the same thing.
Yeah, and the website is AriesTacticalSolutions.com, and that's ARES TacticalSolutions.com. And I've been to the website, and the prices are very reasonable. This is not something that's going to cost somebody, thousands and thousands of dollars to learn. This is really affordable training here. And Elite Pawn and Gun, you want to mention that before we get started?
Yeah, Elite Pawn and Gun is a place I'm working at now in the Columbia area. They're at 7804 Garners Ferry Road. It's just right on the outskirts of Columbia. And Elite Pawn and Gun, naturally, it's a pawn shop and buy, sell, and trade. But Elite Pawn and Gun, also, we have a great selection on guns. Right now, we're running a lot of sales on. I know one of the sales we got going now, which is actually one I might take advantage of myself, is we just got in new Ruger 1022s, and the Valentine's Day special is when you buy a Ruger 1022, you actually get free 22 ammo with it, which 22 ammo is like gold right now. You can't hardly find it anywhere. And the rifles are they're amazingly priced. We definitely have the best handgun prices in town, bar none. I mean, you can come in there and find Glocks for under $500. So.
Nice. So there's a Facebook page for that, right? It's just Elite Pawn and Gun.
Yeah, Elite Pawn and Gun Facebook page. You can find us there. There's a lot of stuff we post up there. Also post some specials for different things. Like if you mention the Facebook page when you come in, there's some discounts that you can get and just amazing deals. I was looking at my boss the other day while he was making the deals, and I was thinking to myself, he's lost his mind. This is crazy.
Well, all right. So that out of the way, I want to go ahead and get into this topic. You're going to tell us a little bit about prepping on a budget. As I mentioned earlier, before I introduced you, that a lot of people have the idea of prepping as building a big giant bunker underground and having 5 years worth of storable food and all kinds of guns and ammunition. But for those of us in the real world, most of us can't afford to do that. And you were going to tell us some ways to do that on a serious budget. So I want to kind of turn it over to you and see where you take it.
Okay, well, in a lot of these prepping shows that are out right now, everyone has this assumption, like you said, that you got to have all this money to prep, and it's just absolutely not true. Of course, if you're one of these people who are just getting into it and you say to yourself that you want to get everything all at once, it's just, of course, you're going to need a lot of money. However, what I always tell people is spend, $20, $30 a week to just get a few things. And you don't have to go out and buy, you don't have to go to all these food websites and everything and spend all this money on this freeze-dried food. Of course, it's great if you can get it already prepackaged where you just got to add water. I've got a little bit of that myself. But most of that stuff is so expensive. But you can do stuff just in your local grocery stores. One of the things right off the bat that I tell everybody is ramen noodles. And I know that ramen noodles are known for having, all the horrible GMOs and all this stuff in it and everything. And that I completely understand. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't eat it, but when it comes time for a survival situation to where you need to feed your family for a little bit, you're not really going to care, what's in the food. At that time, because you're just going to need it to survive. And of course, ramen noodles shouldn't be your base diet. But I always tell people right off the bat, you can afford to get a case of ramen noodles and just get some of that. That's a fine starting place. And most people just don't really think about that. I don't really know why. But you can store a lot of it. We've got some, I tested some a while back that was from like 2009, I think it was. And I actually was like, I don't even know if I can eat this. And we fixed it and added some seasoning and stuff. Tasted fine. So, and I didn't get sick and kill over. So
those things will last forever. I mean, those things would last probably a lot longer than just those couple years.
Yeah. When the end of time comes, there'll be cockroaches and ramen noodles left over. So yeah, you can get ramen noodles pretty easily. That's something that's always important to have. Of course, all your canned foods and stuff is great. Mix it up with beans and fruits and stuff like that. Because when we usually take it and we store all our stuff in the little Tupperware containers and seal it off and seal it up really good. And once it starts getting to where it's been a while that it's been in there, we'll rotate it out and get some more stuff in. And if you want to do rice and stuff, that's fine, but I tend to find it's tough to keep it really safe. Bugs always just seem to find their way into it no matter what you do. So, I tend to kind of stay away from the rice. We do have a little bit, but not much. As far as like one of the small things that I do that I've mentioned this before on the show is I like to, whenever I go places like Chick-fil-A or any of these little fast food places that have the little condiments, the little packets of salt and ketchup, I always get extra. And if I ever go through a drive-through, whatever, I always ask for salt, pepper, ketchup, mustard, whatever. And I bring that home and we store it because it's already prepackaged and you don't have to worry about these big containers of stuff. That's one of the things that a lot of people get. They'll get a can of beans and they get the gigantic can of beans. So what ends up happening is if you ever need it, you have to open this gigantic can of beans and you kind of need to eat it all or it's going to go bad. So if you get small cans, you can do a little bit at a time. That's one of the things I recommend.
Yeah, and an extra added plus with the condiments is that you're costing McDonald's and Burger King and stuff money by doing that. So
that's a plus, absolutely. For sure. And another thing too is with like a can. I like to get cans of ravioli and stuff like that too. With a can of just your regular soup can or ravioli can or whatever, you can actually take the paper off of it and heat up what you want to, like with your ravioli. You can actually heat it up right there in the can. So you kind of have a bowl, cup / food container there. So you don't have to worry about if you got a small fire or whatever going, you can cook the can right over top of it. Just open the can up, of course, and you can cook it right there. So that saves you having to have a container, which is always a plus.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Water. As far as water, I like the Berkey water filters and stuff like that, and I like all of those water filters. But anybody knows that's ever priced them, they're $250, $230, and honestly, I can't. That's more of a budget than I have to spare, and have had to spare in the past. So I tell everybody you can make a Berkey. They're not difficult to make. You can buy the actual Berkey filters online, the filters that go in there, and they're relatively inexpensive. And then you can get 2 pots from like a dollar store or whatever and drill them out and actually make your own Berkey. There's plenty of things on YouTube where you can find how to make a Berkey. So if someone is dead set on that, that's always a plus to have for your water filtration in the future. And of course, things like bleach, you can add a certain amount of drops of bleach to cleanse your water. Also, some people use pool shock. I've never used it, but I've heard that's good for doing a lot of water. But I always recommend people to store water for sure. I mean, storing water is just it shouldn't even be a question. Let's look at where was that at? In West Virginia, I think it was, where they had the chemical spill. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was West Virginia.
Yeah, the chemical spill there, and those people were without water. And you had people out there melting snow, and people were like, oh no, how are we going to get water? Well, if you had some stored water, you wouldn't have to worry about as much. And I have most of my water containers are BPA free too, and that's just a personal thing. I would recommend it, and that's just a little thing you can do. But granted, when it comes to needing water, you're not really going to care what it's stored in.
Well, here's a question for you. I mean, what is the best way to store water? I mean, if you put it, you got containers, for instance. If you use a metal container, it might be good for a little while, but that's going to rust. And what would you say? Is it bottled water that would be the best idea?
We use bottled water a good bit. I like to get milk jug containers too, because you can buy the water in like the milk jug container, and then take it and I'll actually seal up the top on it, just kind of use something to seal it off a little bit so it holds good. You can also buy, I think actually places like Walmart and some other stores will have the big 5-gallon BPA free water containers you can fill up. I'm looking at one right now. You can fill it up and just let it sit, and it is good to go. You're not going to be leaking BPA in your water, and you can just, a plastic container, you can just leave it there and let it sit. That's a good way to go.
Is there a sort of a time limit though that you need to start rotating water in and out?
You can. I honestly, we tend to use our water and then just refill it back up. We have a filter. We have a small filter, and we tend to filter water and refill them back up. That tends to be what I like to do personally. But that's just me. As far as like how long it lasts, I'm really not 100% sure because we never really kept it there long enough.
Well, I mean, if it's water, I mean, it's relatively inexpensive to store, so there would be, no real reason to put water up and just let it sit for 5 years, I guess. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, you can get all that stuff. One of the things some people don't like, if you want to get some bulk foods, some people don't like going to places like Sam's and everything because, you got to have a membership and contrary to what you say, they are tracking the stuff that you're getting, of course, in there with your membership card. One of the kind of little, places people don't think about that I recently just learned about. Actually, I learned about this from reading, Glenn Tate's. This is kind of, I don't know Glenn, but I guess this is kind of a plug. Glenn Tate's 299 days book series. He talked about this in there and I was like, oh, that's genius. There's a place called Cash and Carry. I don't know how many people have heard of Cash and Carry. I didn't know about Cash and Carry. But basically, it's a Sam's Club you don't have to have a membership. They serve restaurant supply stuff and bulk foods, and you can just go in there and buy it. You don't have to have a membership or anything like that. And there's actually one in Sumter that people can use.
There's always Aldi's too. They've got pretty decent deals if you don't have one near you, if you don't have a Cash and Carry near you, right?
Yeah, Aldi's is pretty good too. Yeah, I just went the other day, and a lot of times I'll buy some food items that I think may be used for barter because I'm not one of these guys that likes to buy. Some guys buy ammo and say, well, I'm going to barter with my ammo, and I think to myself, I don't know if I want to have guys coming to the door and I want to be trading bullets that they may use against me later. So I'll give them a couple things of coffee or something.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a good idea. Somebody wants your food and then you trade ammo with them, and then it's one of those situations like, what did you learn out of this?
Yeah,
Never to give my ammo away. That is the lesson.
Exactly.
So before we move on from the food and water issue, I did have one or two questions that people have asked me before, and that's if you're preparing and you have food and water, right? What if there's somebody who has food sensitivities, food allergies, various health concerns? What is the best way to sort of mitigate this? I mean, you're obviously in a bad situation if you're having to use your food stock, but what's the best way to do this in a healthy manner, relatively speaking?
Wow, yeah, that's actually a pretty tough question, 'cause in a way they're going to need a lot of special foods, and the only way I can think to be able to really help them would be supplementation, getting some type of supplements to help them out, and because really at the end of the day, if they have wheat allergies and they're going to eat gluten-free foods and everything, man, they're going to need special foods. It's going to end up costing you a little more on that. That's the one thing when it comes to prepping on a budget. Prepping on a budget typically is eating garbage food. You can eat beans and stuff like that, but yeah, that's actually a pretty tough question to deal with. And in that situation, it's really going to come down to priorities for the person. They're going to have to decide for themselves. Okay, what's going to be more important? Am I going to need to spend this extra money on food, or am I going to get this new TV this week or something like that? Or that for somebody like that, I don't really know. As far as prepping on a budget, that's going to be a very, very difficult situation for them, and they're just going to have to really get into reading food labels and keeping track of everything that they're getting.
Yeah, and if it's food allergies, it might be a good idea to try and have those allergies eliminated before that there's any kind of collapse that you need to prep for. Right? There's a Nayette treatment that can really knock those allergies out, so that you wouldn't have to worry about eating gluten-free after the apocalypse. You'd be able to eat the junk and at least survive without having to seek medical treatment. But
yeah,
so
absolutely. And one thing I wanted to cover real quick. just you were talking about like eating after the apocalypse and everything. You know, one of the things that people ask, I think a lot of these shows that they have on there gives preppers a really bad name. I think they intentionally a lot of times make people look ridiculous on there to give this idea of these preppers are guys running around hiding in bunkers and everything. And because I actually had somebody ask me the other day, they said, you're not one of these people that think there's going to be some kind of zombie apocalypse or anything like that. And I'm like, well, no, I said, it's just common sense. And I said, you know, most of the people that I know who prep are, I'd say 90% to 95% of them are prepping for some sort of economic collapse. And, you know, it's just sensible to have some food, have some guns, have some water and all the bandages, medicine, stuff like that. It's just sensible.
Right. And you always can have the chance of a natural disaster too. I mean, here in South Carolina, I remember when we had Hurricane Hugo, and 50 to 60 miles inland, people were without power for a week. And you know, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that hurricanes or tornadoes or earthquakes can hit. So there's a numerous things that can happen that could cause you to need emergency supplies.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You have wide-scale emergencies, and you also have personal emergencies. Something as simple as, oh, no, I lost my job. You know, how am I going to feed my family this week? Well, guess what? I've got some food stored, and so we can kind of keep ourselves going for a little while. That's where you have your personal emergencies, and that's where you can keep yourself going maybe a little bit until you find yourself another job. I've known preppers that have had stuff like that happen to them, and they've been able to survive long enough in a perfectly, if you want to call it normal world, they've been able to survive just because they had some things stored.
Yeah, and this used to be normal behavior. I mean, people used to have cellars full of food and storerooms and so forth of canned food, not really anticipating some big collapse, but this was just what people did, and you know, that was never a bad idea because, you know, oftentimes people needed to rely on those situations, on those stores. So we got food and water, but what about, I assume we're going to need fire at some point. Obviously a lighter here and there, some matches, but are there any ways for, that people might want to look at to provide themselves with fire in some kind of emergency situation?
Yeah, absolutely. For fire, there's a lot of things. Of course, the easiest way to go is buy you a pack of Bic lighters. That's the easiest way to go. Those are cheap. It never hurts to have matches and candles and everything. Some other things you can get a ferro rod, which is basically what that's doing is it'll throw sparks onto your tinder that you can light up. They have the magnesium fire starters, which those work excellent also as well. And then there's a couple other, you know, of course you can use the battery with steel wool and all that. But really the easiest way at the end of the day for your average Joe Blow that doesn't go out and do survivalist stuff, buy some Bic lighters. They're an easy way to go. They're very cheap. You can get them at the dollar store. I always carry a Bic lighter in my pocket. I don't smoke. I never have, but I always carry a Bic lighter in my pocket because you just never know when you're going to need it. And it's good to always have some source of fire on you. So that's what I would recommend on that note, because if you got fire, as long as you have fire, you pretty much have everything else, because you can cook. You can make, if you got nasty pond scum water, you can filter it through a t-shirt or shamag. You can filter it through that to get most of the garbage out of it and then boil it. So if you got fire, you're doing all right. And some people say, well, you know, if I'm in a survival situation, I don't want to have a fire going because everyone's going to be able to see it, which that's actually true. You can smell and see fire, especially if you're in the woods. You can do that very well, but there are certain ways that you can make a fire to keep it covert. They have trying to remember the name of it. It's a type of fire, basically. The Native Americans use it, where they would dig a hole in the ground, build the fire in there, then have a connecting tunnel coming out of the side with another hole up top, and it basically created a wind tunnel So the fire was completely underground, hardly give off any smoke, and you could cook over it and everything, stay warm. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that works too. I mean, I've actually seen it done, and it works. It's amazing. But let me ask you this before I forget it: the water situation. What's your opinion of life straw? Do you think life straw is pretty good for your preferences?
Yeah, I have heard life straw. I've never personally tried one, but I've heard great things about life straw. I don't have a life straw, but I do have a type of straw. I cannot remember the name of it right off the top of my head because it's actually sitting in my bug out bag right now. It's a small straw. It's very tiny, and you can filter a lot of water through it. And I've read the reviews on it, and I've heard they're great. Never personally tried it, but everyone that I know has tried it has nothing but stellar reviews about it.
Well, all right. Now you mentioned the bug out bag, and we just got a couple about 3 minutes before the break, but maybe we can get into this. Assuming that everybody here should have a bug out bag who's listening, what do you think should be the base ingredients for a good bug out bag?
Well, typically with a bug out bag, a bug out bag is designed to get you from point A to point B. It's not going to be your last bag I'll ever own type of bag, where you load up everything you've got and go. Typically a bug out bag will be something small that will say, okay, I'm trying to get from point A to point B. So if you're making a bag that, if it's going to be a wilderness survival bag, then that's going to be a little different than your bug out bag. But base elements right off the top of my head that I would go with, that I keep in mind: fire, number one. You also have, which gives you the methods of filtering and cooking water, preparing water. I would also want to have some sort of scarf, which I have a shamag attached to mine. Some type of scarf. It can be used for a lot of different things. You're going to want to have a container in there, some sort of container that you can hold water in, transport water. That's always a plus. Small, I like to keep a mess kit in mind, a couple dry bags and stuff like that. You want to have some meds, bandages, stuff like all things like that. I always want to have a knife too, a good knife in there. If you got one, try and get two. One of the things you always want to do is try and have two of everything you've got. But really, a bug out bag is when it comes to designing one, you need to design it around what is good for you, because my type of bug out bag may not be the same as other people. I have a little more wilderness survival skills, so with my bag, it's going to consist more of things to protect myself as opposed to survival mechanisms, because the more survival skills that you attain, the less gear that you have to rely on.
Right.
So that's an important factor for people to think about too. If you're not the camping type and you're not good at making your own stuff and finding this and finding that in the wild, you're probably going to need to carry a lot more gear than somebody like me. But I always like to make sure that I have really good primitive survival skills, because the less survival gear that I have to carry, that's more guns and ammo that I can carry, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's also lighter too, right? I mean, you don't have to, like you say, you don't have to rely on all this stuff.
Absolutely. And a lot of people get these theories about their bag and how great, I've got this 60-pound bag. And I'm thinking, okay, how many times have you ever hiked with it? Have you taken it to the hills? Have you walked with it? And have you ever carried a gun? How much ammo do you think you can carry? Because guys store all this ammo for their guns, and they're like, I got 10,000 rounds. I'm like, what are you going to do with it if you're planning on leaving your house as soon as things get bad? You can't carry that much ammo. If you start carrying 1,000 rounds of just something like 9mm, that's ridiculously heavy. And you add that to all your other gear. I mean, come on.
Yeah, 60-pound bags are easy to carry from the bedroom to the living room, but when you're hiking 2 or 3 miles through the woods up and down hills, it's not as easy to do. We're going to have to take a break right now for station identification. My guest tonight is Alan Moore of AriesTacticalSolutions.com and Elite Pawn and Gun. Stay with us, Alan. We'll be right back after this.
While much of the nation, as we've been reporting, is struggling with a wet and freezing winter, the Southwest is experiencing record heat. And for weeks, California has been suffering from a serious drought. As you can see on this map, more than 90% of the state is experiencing a severe to exceptional shortage of water. The areas shaded in red and maroon are the most extremely parched areas of the state. President Obama is visiting California today, where he's meeting with farmers in the Central Valley as part of his trip. He's directing more than $160 million in federal aid, much of it going to provide relief for those farmers and ranchers with livestock losses. Special correspondent Spencer Michaels has been spending time with farmers and others who are feeling the effects. Here's his report.
Dairyman Don DiBernardi has had a rough winter. The 700 cows he milks at his organic dairy in Sonoma County, California, are eating costly hay, not the lush green grass they usually munch on this time of year. The 14-month drought has kept it brown until just now. That could put his organic certification in jeopardy. He's had to truck water in to clean his milking barn. His springs are dry.
As far as pasture, we're not going to have any feed for at least 2 months.
And what's the result of that?
Well, we have to truck hay in where there's not much hay left in the state.
So what are you going to do?
Well, we come out of state. Well, we have to try and get hay somewhere.
Each of his cows drinks 35 to 40 gallons of water a day. Like a lot of dairymen, he's considering selling some of them for beef, since it's too expensive to feed them.
We'll have to wait and see if the pasture comes or how the hay supply holds out. We probably will sell some. You can't afford to feed an animal all year and buy hay to feed it.
The problem, says DiBernardi, is too many people and not enough stored water.
More people come into California. They build more homes, but they do not build any infrastructures for dam for water supply.
50 miles north of the cattle ranch in the wine country of Sonoma County, grape growers whose vines are dormant right now have been told by water officials in meetings like this one that the drought could be of biblical proportions. They use water in the winter to protect the grapes from frost and in the summer to irrigate them. Without enough, the crop gets smaller and the vines are vulnerable to freezing.
The early February storms in Northern California got everyone excited until they realized that what seemed to be a monumental storm was really just a drop in the bucket. Water officials say the state would need 6 or 7 more such storms to end this drought, and that is very unlikely.
With the so-called rainy season half over, the state remains in bad shape. Reservoirs are far below capacity, and rivers are trickling like it was the summer. The state's huge agricultural production is in jeopardy in the Central Valley as groundwater is becoming scarce. In the mountains, where melting snow provides much of the water for the rest of the state, the snowpack increased this month from 10% of normal to 22%, but that's far too low. Last month, Governor Jerry Brown officially declared a drought emergency and called on all citizens to cut back at least 20% of their water use, though conservation efforts would be voluntary. In Cloverdale, a quiet agricultural town in Sonoma County, 90 miles north of San Francisco, its 8,500 residents were told by the state that they, along with 16 other communities, could run out of water within 2 to 4 months. While Public Works Director Craig Scott doesn't believe the situation is that bad, he says the town's plight is serious.
We just have had the driest year on record in 2013.
For more news, visit youtube.com/pigmine5.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. I want to remind all of you who are just joining us for the first time tonight that you can catch Truth on the Tracks here every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on UCY.TV. Tonight I have a special guest, Alan Moore of AresTacticalSolutions.com. That's ARES, TacticalSolutions.com, as well as Elite Pawn and Gun in Columbia, South Carolina. We're talking about prepping on a budget. we're going to continue with that and talk about some more things. We were talking about a bug out bag, and this is going to lead us into a self-defense conversation as well. But just to kind of recap some things that we've talked about in the first segment of the program, Alan, just in general, say you said earlier maybe $20 to $30 a week if you can afford it to buying some common sense items for prepping. What would you say if somebody says, okay, I've got my $20 right now ready to buy something? What would you say if that person asks you, what should I prioritize first?
If I had to tell them priority-wise, the first thing I would tell them to do is get some storable water, because you can go a lot longer without food than you can with water. And the easiest way to do it is to go to your dollar store and you can get the 1 gallon bottles of water. You can get those for $1 a piece. Go there and grab you 10 of those, and then I would probably grab a couple cases of ramen noodles and maybe a couple cans of chicken noodle soup and some beans, and there's your $20 spent, and you've already probably covered yourself for a couple of days to a week.
Okay, very good. Now, here's another question that I have. We're talking about prepping, but not just prepping where you are, bug out bags and so forth. Now, I hear a lot of people, and it seems to go from one extreme. Some people who are prepping keep it a secret as if they're in the CIA, right? This is a national security secret. Nobody should see my bug out bag or know that I'm storing up food. Other people go the opposite direction and they tell everybody that they're prepping. They tell everybody what they've got. I guess both of those things can be good and both of those things can be bad. What would you say in terms of how open you are with prepping and what your supplies are? Do you think there should be a happy medium here, or should we just shut up about it entirely?
I think a happy medium is a good idea to keep, and I'll tell you why. Because I spoke about this before on the show briefly. However, since then, the more people I've talked to, I'm finding that this is more of a common trend, and it's what I refer to as the dark side of prepping. There are many, many people, more than I even thought of, whose idea of prepping anymore is, I'm just going to get guns, I'm just going to get ammo, and whatever I need, I'm going to come to your house and take it. And it's a lot more than I even thought about. I thought that most of the people I had referred to as that had told me this were people who were military contractors, ex-military police. They were throwing these ideas around. And now I'm starting to find that more and more civilians are starting to say stuff like that. Guys down the street are starting to throw these ideas around. I'm just going to come to your house and take what I want. So I think as far as like bug out bags and everything, I don't mind showing people my bug out bags and everything, but I'm not gonna take somebody and show them what I have, everything that I have stored, and I'm not gonna tell them what I've got personally, because just for that type of situation, it's the same way I tell my daughter. I say, hey, don't be telling your friends the stuff that we have here, because to be honest with you, I don't want to have to deal with that type of situation should it arise when everything goes crazy. Because your normal people, once they start seeing their children starve, once they start seeing they start running out of food, desperate people do desperate things. And the less situation that I have to put myself in to defend what I have and protect my family, I'm gonna take the road of being passive, so I don't have to do anything that I regret.
Well,
I'll say that tactfully.
Well, there's that famous Twilight Zone episode where a man has built himself a nuclear fallout shelter, and everybody laughs at him and thinks he's crazy. And then the nuclear blast is coming down, and they end up tearing his doors down to get in and dragging him out of his own fallout shelter, because they didn't do the whole ant and grasshopper situation, right? They didn't do anything to prepare, but now it's do or die, and you've told everybody what you have, but now they're going to come for what you have. As you said, if they're watching their kids starve, there's no telling what they'll do. So
exactly.
Now, a lot of people I know kind of weigh the cost and benefits of prepping individually and prepping with a group of like-minded people that prep together and you know, kind of prepare for this situation together. Obviously, there's benefits to both and negatives to both. If you want to speak on that a little bit, because one of the things that I see, the problems when they prep together in groups, it's good because you have like-minded people together and there's strength in numbers, and some people can do things that other people can't. Different people can bring different things to the groups. But also, if you're not very careful about who you bring into that group, then that can go really bad really fast. And I see a lot of these groups, the world hasn't even reached the point where you have to dip into your prepping stocks yet, and they're already fighting each other. So that wouldn't bode well in an emergency situation. And a lot of these groups just break up, and somebody walks away with all of the hard work and time and effort that somebody put into the prepping group. So what do you have to say in terms of weighing the benefits of prepping together in groups or individually, or or why would you choose one over the other, or should you do both?
That's an excellent question. And I'll tell you my method on that. The prepping in a group is fantastic because of the exact things that you mentioned, but it's also horrible for the exact same things you mentioned. What I like to do is I prep individually, and I have other like-minded individuals who I would consider part of my group, and they all prep individually also. However, we don't prep together, meaning I prep at my house, they prep at their house, and so forth and so on. However, the way we're set up, if I were to say where I was looking at a map and I was in the middle, they're all around me. Some of them are 50 miles away, some of them are 10 miles away, but there's a circle of friends around me who are all prepped. And you keep some of your stuff there, they keep some of your stuff here, just little bits and pieces. And so we all work together. Everybody has radios, the way they can communicate with each other. So in a situation that something bad happens, let's say, for instance, I'm in Colombia and something happens and I can't get back home to where I'm at. Well, I have a couple people that I can contact in Colombia who can give me supplies that I can meet with that are part of my group, and we can start relaying messages to get messages back home, and I can grab some supplies from them if I need some to start making my way back home. So you have kind of a circle of friends rather than a group all bundled together.
Yeah, that's what I see with a lot of these groups who will have 5 guys who are prepping together, and either all of the material is at one person's house or they've got a central location. And again, they start infighting after a few months, and eventually somebody just walks away with thousands of dollars worth of prepping gear.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's continue with this. We mentioned, kind of danced around the whole self-defense issue a few times, but I think this is going to be one of the more important issues because, as you said, you've got people saying, well, I don't need food, I'll just come to your house and take it. Well, you're going to have to be able to prevent them from taking it. So what would you say in terms of self-defense? What would somebody need to prep, particularly prepping on a budget for self-defense, but beyond that as well?
The very first thing that I would recommend, and I tell everybody this, the first thing people need to do is start getting in shape if they're not already in shape. They need to, and you don't have to hit a gym to do that. You can get in shape on a budget too. That could be a whole other show. Getting in shape, you can do workouts and stuff at home. There's all kind of things you can do. But the first thing people need to do is get in shape, because I remember watching, one of these, prepper shows, and there's a guy talking about, he's walking around with like a military helmet on and holding a rifle saying, I'm ready to defend my land, but he's rolling around on a scooter. And I'm thinking, this guy would have a heart attack if he ran 10 feet. So how's this guy think he's going to protect his property and his family? So the first thing people need to do is get in shape. That's rule number 1, because if you can't fight, you better be good at running. So, at least be able to run away. So,
and at
but
that
as far
weight,
as
Alan, at that weight, you can forget hiding behind a tree.
Yeah, you actually become the barrier that other people hide behind. So that's the thing. It works out perfectly. So he becomes the bullet shield. So that's perfect. But as far as like self-defense, I always recommend people to get some reality-based self-defense training, empty hands, because there may come a point where you need that. I have a theory that when it comes to the storing of ammo, I have a feeling that I always prepare for economic collapse. And I think that if anything ever does happen like that, I see everybody kind of starting to eat each other in a way. That's the way I put it. Kind of like the Joker said in The Dark Knight, these people, they'll eat each other. And that's kind of the way I see it. That may be a bad way to look at it, but that's the way I see it. And I think you're going to see probably most people are going to start, even the people with thousands of rounds of ammo are going to start running out of bullets around the 6-month period. If it goes that long, I think it definitely could. And so you're going to start seeing people running out of ammo. And that's when these other skills are going to come in handy, empty hand skills. But if you got decent firearm skills, you can at least be able to make your ammo last a little while if you need to. But I think people need firearms training, and they definitely need empty hand skills. And most of all, they need to be in shape.
Well, now, in terms of outside of the budget issue, right, if we're talking about firearms, obviously it's a good idea to have firearms and ammo. What would you recommend in terms of self-defense? We're going to go through this in various different situations, but in terms of a collapse, whether it's economic, natural disaster, or some other kind of strange situation, what would you recommend? What kind of firearm would you recommend for someone to have in terms of self-defense? And also, before you answer that, Alan, we were talking about different tools that you could have other than firearms if you're prepping on a budget, right? I want your opinion on this. What do you think about things as simple as machetes and axes and stuff like this? You could sharpen a machete and it becomes a sword. It's no longer a weed cutting tool. I mean, what's your opinion on some of the things you can get cheaper?
As far as things on a budget, I will say this about firearms. I have the belief, just from my experience in working with people with firearms, is that you get what you pay for. If you get $100 gun, if you go out and buy a High Point or something like that, you're going to get $100 worth of service out of it. I mean, the question I always propose to people is, how much is your life worth? They say, well, I don't have such and such amount of money to do this. And I say, okay, so you're saying your life is worth less than $400? Is that that's what you're telling me? And they're like, well, no. And I said, well, that's the way I prioritize things. When it comes to, as far as I know, ammo right now is expensive and tough to get. So I always tell people, it's tough for me to get too, but, I make sacrifices. Maybe I'll skip my coffee for a month, my morning Starbucks or whatever. I'll skip my coffee for a month or whatever I have to do to burn a little bit of ammo just so I get good with my firearm, be able to use it if I need to. As far as like other things, that's one of the reasons we offer the combat archery course, because, with the archery, one of the great things is you can always find more ammo. You can always make more arrows. You can reuse your ammo if you can get your arrow after you shoot it. Plus, it's quiet. Needless to say, in a collapse type situation, any gunshot is going to basically be like a beacon saying, "Here I am." Especially if you fire more than one. There's an old saying that one gunshot is a car backfire, and two shots is gunplay. So one shot you may not know where it come from, but as soon as that second shot comes, like, okay, somebody's shooting. With a bow, you can keep it quiet. For one, you can stretch out distance like you would not believe, especially with a lot of the modern bows. So that's an option. Machetes, of course. I have a machete. I have several machetes. I keep the cold steel machetes. I keep one in my vehicle, and they're all sharpened like a sword. You could shave with it if you needed to. of course, any knives or anything. I always recommend high quality knives because it's the same way. I typically do not skimp a whole lot on my weapons because I figure if I ever need them, that things are really bad, and I don't want to have any question about, okay, is this going to break? Is it sharp enough? Is it going to jam on me when I pull the trigger? I don't want to have any questions. I want to know what it does, and I want to be very confident in me because in that darkest hour, that is not the question I want to have. Okay, is my gun going to shoot this time? So.
Yeah, and of course, hatchets. That was the other thing I was looking for.
Oh,
I
yeah.
Think of the name for it, but a hatchet is pretty effective.
Yeah, I have two cold steel tomahawks that I keep, and both of those are razor sharp also. And yeah, absolutely. And the good thing about that is, even with like a bow, like I was talking about earlier, or a knife or hatchet or whatever, if you don't have a gun, if you for some reason maybe you've lost something happened, you just don't have your gun. With one of those weapons, you can get another one. Trust me. So that's always an option too.
All right. Well, like I said, in terms of budget aside, if we're worried about a collapse situation, whatever form it might take, and we're looking specifically at firearms, what would you recommend? I guess it would depend a lot on the person and the situation, right? But what would you recommend for self-defense purposes? So
I would recommend if you need to have a rifle. For sure. I always recommend somebody to have a rifle, and there's a lot of rifles out there, but you can't go wrong with an AR-15 or an AK. Either one of those are going to be good. There's pros and cons to both, and most people, I get the question all the time at Elite Pawn and Gun that people say, well, which do you prefer, an AR or an AK? Whichever one works when I pull the trigger. That's basically it. I mean, they're both great guns. They both work. There's pros and cons to both. One of the pros to the AR-15 though is that in a grid down, collapse type situation, you're always going to be able to find parts for them, and you're going to be able to find ammo because that is what the military and police are using. So, and it's the same with Glocks, with handguns. If you've got a Glock, there's plenty of parts out there, and you're going to be able to always find ammo and parts and magazines and all that. For home defense, I recommend people have a shotgun, preferably a 12 gauge.
So Joe Biden
really
was
matter.
right.
Yes, Joe was absolutely correct. That's right. But no, Joe's an idiot. To be honest with you, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, because his statement was regarding about women being able to shoot a shotgun or whatever. And I can tell you right now, if I handed my wife my 12 gauge and told her to shoot it, she would probably shoot me with it after the second shot because it's going to kick really hard. The AR-15 and .223 is like shooting a pellet gun almost if you know what you're doing. But you can, if you don't have a shotgun, a rifle is perfectly acceptable for home defense. Also, I know that makes a lot of the elitists out there, that makes them very upset to hear that AR-15s can be used for home defense, but it is true. You can, and they have. So,
well, speaking of of women, if a smaller woman is looking for a handgun, specific type of handgun, what would you recommend in that regard?
Well, when it comes to handguns, a lot of people get into this whole caliber war and everything. I told somebody the other day, there's more cliche in the gun world than there is actual shooting. And I hear so much cliche from people. They think if you hit somebody with a 45, they're going to fly through the air and disintegrate like they got shot by a phaser or something like that. But in reality, I don't recommend anybody get anything smaller than a 9mm. I personally carry a 9mm. The reason is I can carry more ammo, for one. For two, how well can you control it? And people say, well, I can control this big gun with two hands. Okay, well, what happens if you have to use one hand? What happens if you have to use your non-dominant hand? Can you still control that gun just as well? And for women, a woman can handle a 9mm. She can handle a 38 or something like that. Really, it all becomes, most problems people have with shooting come from grip. grip issues and arm placement and everything. It's a lot of small things that people wouldn't think about. But I've had people that tell me, oh, this gun kicks like crazy, and I hand it to them and I change their grip and alter their arm position and their stance, and they're shooting it like it's a pellet gun or something. So I would definitely say 9mm and bigger. I don't like 380s. 22s are great for what they are, but they're not very good at defending yourself with, in my opinion. 380s are underpowered, in my opinion, also. So I like 9mm.
9mm, okay. Well, compared to the 45, what do you think the 9mm would do?
9mm. Well, this is the thing. With 45 is a great big round. It also is a slow moving round. And I've actually seen, there's video on YouTube, that people can look this up, where a guy tests it, against a regular frying pan that he bought from the dollar store. He shoots the frying pan at maybe about 5 yards with a 45, and the 45 bullet puts a dent in the frying pan, but it does not go through it. He shoots it with the 9mm and it punches a hole straight through it. So everybody thinks that just because it's a bigger bullet that it does more damage, and that's not the case, because really when it comes to a wound from a gunshot doing what it does and being lethal and stopping the fight, it's not so much the size of the bullet, because when you measure the two bullets, they're right on the money. I mean, there's a little bit size difference when you start measuring them, but the primary thing is the primary wound channel that goes through the body. And all that tissue that gets pushed apart is going to push right back together again. And there's been surgeons who have checked to measure to see, okay, they're like, okay, what did this guy get shot with, a 9mm or 45? And the surgeon's like, I have no idea. They look exactly the same. So everybody gets caught up in this huge caliber war, but there's a very big chance that the person could hide behind, say, hide behind a car door or whatever. Your 45 may not go through the door of that, but the 9mm punch holes through it all day long. So I'm a 9mm guy. You know, some people just die at 45, so whatever. They're both good rounds. They both poke holes in things.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised. I didn't expect the 9mm to outdo the 45 in that regard, but you know, that's I learned something here with that. Well, we've only got a couple minutes left, Alan. First of all, you want to tell us a little more about Aries Tactical Solutions and anything else you want to add?
Yeah, well, with Aries Tactical Solutions, you know, one of the problems we've been having is finding a good range to keep our classes going consistently. We're kind of hopping around right now, but we're looking to get a permanent range going on up in Columbia area. We're working with that right now so we can get regular classes going weekly. But anybody that needs to contact me, the easiest way to do it is probably you can do it through the website. You can find me on Facebook. Aries Tactical Solutions is on Facebook. And if you're in Columbia, stop by Elite Pawn and Gun, because I'm there 5 days a week. So you can come in there and you can actually talk with me, and we can go over some things, and you can actually see what guns fit your hand the best.
Awesome. Alan, thanks so much for coming on the show. We're going to have you back up again soon, and it's been a great interview. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was Alan Moore of Aries Tactical Solutions, ariestacticalsolutions.com, and Elite Pawn and Gun. You can find both of those organizations on Facebook. This has been Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. We'll see you next week.
Despite all the talk about economic hard times from lawmakers, the Center for Responsive Politics has found the median net worth for a Congress member is now at $1,008,767, meaning for the first time just over 50%